So basic business ideas and principles. So this note is not me as a business person trying to give necessarily huge amounts of advice for crafting everything from the beginning. That's not my area of expertise necessarily, but I do have some general things that I think would be good if you are making science-based tabletop games for institution or doing it for your own private self. And I think that these are things that are good to establish at the beginning that will give you the greatest chance of success in terms of the games getting out there and helping people learn about science and that kind of thing. So it's three general things. So the first thing is getting the word out early and introducing as many people as possible to the game and involving them, if possible, in the creation ideation process. Because if people have a personal stake in what you're doing, be they supervisors or workmates or like other little businesses or other institutions or reviewers or anything like that, then they're going to be invested in your success and the success of your game, and it will likely help with getting it approved if that's the kind of arrangement you're working under. But it's very hard to start from zero in terms of getting a game out there, like waiting until it's completely ready and then going, now let's talk about it, because unfortunately you're going to be not behind, but you sort of have to start that process from the beginning if you start it right after your game is completely finished. And there's lots of opportunities in the lead up to your game being finished to actually start getting the word out and getting that kind of engagement and investment from people and that demand in terms of people that would like to talk about or buy or share or use your product. So that's the first one, is get others involved early. The second one is I would recommend not making the first game you make, the brand under which you are creating games. So one thing that I see often, which is okay, but it's something that I would not necessarily recommend myself, is people make a online presence totally based around the name of the game that they've created. And it is easy to pivot away from that afterwards. So what do I mean by this? Like, so when Half Monster first started, we had a game called Goo Nebula Panic, but instead of making all the social media channels and stuff, Goo Nebula Panic, the game, and then sort of building audiences for them, I've sort of had a look around and figured out that what a lot of other successful indie companies do is that they do have a company brand or like a subdivision of institution that they're working under that they do develop and create the games through. So we were Half Monster Games making Goo Nebula Panic. And then the next game, we were Half Monster Games making Still in Business, and then Terrible Candidates, and then Animal Empire, and then Trust Me, I'm a Doctor, and now Trust Me, I'm a Superhero, and so on and so forth. And the reason that I would do that is that it can feel like you're doubling up and it's twice as hard at the start, but it does mean that your audience is engaging with you as a entity that creates games, and they're not engaging with the game itself. Specifically, because then once that game is released, and this ties into my third point, once this game that you're working on is released, it can be a little trickier to then reorientate the entire audience to the next game. It might just end up splitting that audience and you have to sort of start from near zero again. But if people are identifying with the brand as like the producers and you as the developer, of multiple potential games, then every time you create a new product, you're sort of bringing that audience with you because they're invested in you and they're invested in the history and the story of your company and stuff like that rather than a specific game. So that's something that I would recommend. And the third thing is, while you're setting all of this up, if you can, plan for your first game to not be your last. Because that will, I think, start the mindset and of both developing processes over developing a single product, which in the end will actually end up being better for your initial product. Because, for example, when looking for a manufacturer, I wasn't necessarily just looking for a manufacturer that could do the cheapest version of my first ever game. I was looking for a manufacturer that I had a good working relationship with, and that might not have been the cheapest, but I found the experience of communicating and sending files and getting feedback and stuff to actually be quite seamless, because I wanted to do a lot more of that. I didn't want it to just be one and done. If there's friction there, I'm just like, oh, I don't have to think about it because I don't have to deal with this person again. One thing that I am learning, and again, I am no expert, one thing that I'm learning about this industry and sort of working in institutions and things like that, and organizations like universities, is that repeatedly working with people and finding people that you can work repeatedly with often leads to better outcomes, because there is a bit more of a give and take outside of just the traditional kind of money arrangement where you pay for a service and then they do a thing and that's it. Which sounds quite obvious, but it's something that I think it's worth thinking about. And because generally it's unlikely that your first product, generally, there are exceptions, such as like Cards Against Humanity, that was their first product and it went gangbusters, but generally, yeah, your first product is not going to be your most successful product of all time. So it's worth thinking about it if you have the capacity there. What's next? And am I setting up things that are going to work for what comes after what I'm currently working on? And it will probably actually make what you're doing now more efficient and better in general, from a business point of view. So materials for this node section are sort of writing down a bit of a worksheet, like thought experiment, like, are you wanting to do a one and done? Are you wanting to set up a bit more of a long-term brand or company presence? Are there other future ideas that you could start putting out there and thinking? And also a little bit of a checklist about people that you could get involved, if you know anyone, or you might want to start looking to get people involved at an earlier stage of your project, which will help raise the chances of it being successful. So questions, put them down in the comments. Feedback, please. And yeah, once again, good luck.